All right, welcome back to Modern Symposium. We spoke last week about the Iran war, and now this week, in a very strange, rare occurrence, there is not any new major news that has stolen the limelight already. The Iran war still seems to be the main topic of conversation in the political realm, at least. And since we already went pretty detailed last week on that, we might give a quick update here, but then we wanted to do something a little different and kind of step away from the news and maybe just look at bigger picture philosophy stuff. Maybe have a few debates, few discussions, just to kind of switch up the pace instead of just talking about how the world's ending all the time. We'll talk about something a little bit more enlightening. But with that being said, Nick is here as well. Nick, anything to start it off?
Yeah, I'm quite excited for the prompts that we're gonna have today. I think the Overlord's kind of cooked with some pretty good ones, and it's pretty good list. What I was kind of thinking in this last week, same thing. We texted each other like a day ago, like somehow nothing's happened in a week, and again, that just speaks to like our fried attention spans and our literally 24-hour news cycles becoming what seems like 24-minute news cycles or something crazy like that. Here's what's something insane to think about. The Iraq war was 20 years. This has been going on for a week and we're already like, oh, it's still Iran is in the news. It's think about what if this went on for 20 years?
Yeah, and it
That,
honestly
and that makes
might.
that makes no sense, right?
I mean, the if you look at Iran and Iraq, they're both very similar when it comes to like their population, like the makeup of their population. Like both of them are um like majority Shia Muslims with a minority of Sunni Muslims. They also have very similar like geographies. So, I mean, that's a major part of why it's very difficult to win a war in Afghanistan or in Iran or in Iraq because they're kind of, they what do they say? Like, this is where empires go to die.
They're
And
strongholds. It's mountains on all sides, and if anyone knows anything, it's oh yeah, like much harder to root out a native people out of mountainous terrain than like anything else, basically.
yeah, right. And I think Iran is basically the same way. So, I mean, if the plan is full on regime change, which it kind of seems like it might be, then this is going to be a very prolonged, ongoing thing for a while.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's one of the big things is what is the plan? We've gotten four or five plans seemingly, and this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. You said you had gone through on like this past weekend, going through what the administration has given reasons for why this is happening. I kind of correlate the two, like what the plan is kind of has to correlate with why we're doing this essentially, right? Gotten a lot of gotten a lot of reasons. So what was the one you were just talking about? Regime change. That one's one of the more likely ones, and hilariously, like one of the main talking points that the Trump administration came into this was no forever wars, no regime change wars, which that's what these are.
yeah, it definitely seems like it is. And as far as just not telling us the plan, I think that is the plan. The plan is it's a covert plan, and so part of it has to do with the element of surprise and things like that. And so if they don't want to tell us like what's coming next, that's totally understandable. But the fact that they're not saying what already happened and they're not describing it accurately, and they're not even really trying that hard to make up a good lie. Like we were saying, there was like 4 or 5 different stories, and I went through all of them over the last weekend and took a little deep dive look into them, and not a single one holds up. What does hold up is the idea that this is really just a proxy war with the intent of combating China. That one is, to me, the most realistic, and that would also make sense why they can't really just come out and say that. Um, they can't, they got to keep the wars covert. So I think that if I were betting money on it, I would be banking on basically the idea being that so first we go into Venezuela, we get Maduro out, we work with the current regime, and we establish a deal where they will sell us oil and they will also push oil out to the rest of the world. And then as soon as we do that, then we immediately go and we strike Iran, knowing that they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz, and which is their main go-to as a defense mechanism against any attack. That way they can tank the entire uh, global economy by causing a price shock in the oil sector. Except for we just secured oil from Venezuela that used to not be on the market. Now it's on the market, and so it kind of cancels out immediately. And
Is the oil pumping out of Venezuela though? Because that's something I've seen that like as a counter argument to that, it's like I don't really know if the oil is flowing or not.
So I believe it is, but I did see this on the internet, and so it very much could be a lie. But what I saw was that it started flowing the day before we called in Operation Epic Fury. And so that's what really like stood out as okay, so this was the Venezuela if that's true, then the Venezuela move Operation what was the Venezuela one we called again? Midnight
Midnight
Hammer?
No, Midnight Hammer was I think our strike on Iran 6 months ago
Okay, yeah.
when we took out their WMDs. So,
Venezuela was Midnight Climax. Midnight
was it?
Climax.
That sounds very erotic.
And so yeah, so it turns out that Midnight Climax and Epic Fury go hand in hand. They if that if that is true that the oil is flowing, then that seems to be that this is one mission that, you know, they're with the same intent. The intent was always to go in to Iran. And so
Yeah.
I
So,
think
I mean,
that makes the most sense to me
it
out of everything else.
I kinda wanna go over the ones that don't really make sense as well, but staying on China here for now, this is the one that makes the most sense. The All In podcast, when I watched that the other day, it did feel like an hour of propaganda at this point. But that was one of their main points was the China aspect of it. They didn't even like acknowledge really the other aspects that like the five other stories that the administration has kind of given us. I also don't know. I've also realized in the past week or two that we now do certainly live in a post truth world because I cannot tell what is real on Twitter at all anymore. There'd be like videos of a bombing, and then apparently that bombing's fake. And then there's videos of a bombing, like, well, that can't be real. And then supposedly that's real. I can almost guarantee you the number one most popular tweet, like the most common tweet is at Grok, is this real? Because no one can fucking tell if it's real or not. And now Grok is the arbiter of truth on Twitter, and I don't even know if Grok is right most of the time. Most of the
Yeah,
time.
I've seen Grok be dead wrong on some stuff too. But but yeah, I mean, so I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but have I ever mentioned it's I wouldn't really call it a book, but it's kind of a book. It's more like a long essay called Unrestricted Warfare. Um
I don't remember that off the top of my head, so
so a guy I know who was in the military told me to read this because I was talking to him about something to do with China. And it was basically it was released in 1998 and it was written by two like Chinese generals in the People's Liberation Army. And it was after the Gulf War happened, and we kind of kicked ass in the Gulf War. And they were basically just kind of studying the United States military and studying how we respond to things and stuff like that. And they came up with this whole kind of grand idea, which at the time probably seemed pretty crazy, and now it seems like obvious. But the idea was basically that the United they were accusing us of doing it, which I'm sure we do, and but now it's very clear that they do it, I think, which is that they engage in acts of war that aren't necessarily like military combat, but they are designed to kind of sabotage the other country. And you know, we've talked about quite a few of these a lot, but like economics, the information, you know, propaganda wars,
I mean,
cybersecurity,
the
all these
CIA's
things.
been doing that shit for decades, right? Literally,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's like what all the cool like spy shit's about. It's like, oh, you send in one guy to like fuck up some project essentially that's going on, and no one even realizes that that's an act of like international espionage, which is an extension of like like warfare, intelligence warfare, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so and I think we did talk about this a little bit on the last episode, but China basically has I mean they published the paper in 1998, so they've been on to us for like almost 30 years. And now they're in a pretty good position when it comes to that because and I think we mentioned it on the last one, they do have the Chinese firewall, so we can't go in there and mess with their algorithms as easy as they can come in and mess with ours. And so that might be at least partially um, contributing towards like a lot of the propaganda and stuff. And I'm sure like every country is doing that basically, not just
Well,
China.
right,
But
right, because it's not even that it's just China. There, every fucking country is posting through unknown Twitter, handles. Essentially, you don't even realize this is an agent of another country. Could have like hundreds of thousands of followers, and yeah, like its bio is like I don't know, like MAGA, like you expect it to be some like American dude, and it's just like not. And obviously that's not just like MAGA accounts. There's so many liberal accounts. I'm sure of it as well, but it's impossible to know what's happening. I feel like, or you just have to like take all information and feel like you aggregate it in your mind, kind of. It's crazy.
yeah, no, especially just from social media, it's hard to believe. I mean, it's probably unwise to believe anything. I think if you've got like some podcasters who you know are pretty credible that you've like, I've got a couple guys that I've just been listening to for years. It's not that they've gotten it right every time, but they, if they didn't get it right, they correct it, and so builds up a reputation. So I trust them. And then just reading books is usually like the thing about a book is that you can't straight up lie. That you could definitely spin stuff, but you can't just make stuff up because you got to cite your sources. You got to get through the publishing company, so you can't just be making up total nonsense. I guess or at least I'd like to think so. Maybe they can. I don't know.
What the I feel like the pulse of this has been like pretty overwhelmingly negative. Is that what you're hearing on most of the podcasts that you've been listening to?
Yeah, I mean, so listen to Ben Shapiro. He's been fully aroused this entire time. He
Right.
can't he cannot control himself. He's just giddy with excitement about this. But other than him, that yes, everyone else that I typically listen to, they're largely negative. I mean, you got like the Dave. It's basically a lot of Smith type of people, and obviously we know the libertarian crowd not very pro-war. And then you've got, I mean, from every direction you've got this. So you've got like the Nick Fuentes crowd who doesn't like this because they're
Right.
anti-Israel, and so they
Right.
don't want to be in there. Then you've got Alex Jones, who has been kind of preaching about how the military industrial complex and the neocons and the warmongers and he's been saying that since before 9/11, and so now he's like distraught because he's been the number one Trump guy forever, and now he's like crying on the air saying that Trump must be compromised. It's all theatrics, but that's basically the gist that it's sounding like from everyone. I mean, at
What's Tim
least as far
Pool
as I've
saying?
been. Tim Pool.
Yeah. Let's see.
So I mean, he's kind of taken a relatively neutral stance as far as I've seen him. I haven't tuned in for very much of him over the past week or two, but from what I have, he is basically kind of said, I think, kind of what I said. I might have stolen that from him actually, or maybe he stole it from me, but I said how it's like it's hard to be like pro-war or anti-war because it's like, you know, I'm not pro-war or anti-war, but it's just I'm pro-truth, so I want to know why the war is happening, and I can decide whether it's justified or not. That's kind of how Tim Pool is approaching it. It seems like, and I mean he probably has a similar stance to me, which is that um, basically that whether or not it's justified, it's definitely debatable, but I don't think I'm like horrified by the fact that this war is happening. I do trust the process that you know, there might be some smart people in the Pentagon, hopefully, that are doing something for a reason. But at the same time, we don't want like, how we open, we don't want to get into another 20-year war. We don't want to be murdering school children. We don't want to have people, sending Americans over there to die. You know, I guess it's too early at this point, but I mean, if this is a quick get in and get out and it actually is effective, and the United States has something to gain from it, then I will say, okay, well done. But until they can show that that's the case, then I'm not going to sit around and believe that that's going to happen.
Yeah. Um. So I've been watching this series called The Great. You ever heard of that?
I don't think so.
So it's about Catherine the Great. So Russia, like 1700s, right? And it's I think mostly like fictional. based in truth, right? Like I'm sure a lot of the storylines are made up, but it's really really good, and it's like a comedy too. So it's just like pretty. It's like absurdist humor, like these Russians are like I don't know, like partying with like bears and like all this like crazy stuff. But it's basically Catherine the Great is like single handedly trying to like thrust Russia out of the Dark Ages and like embrace Enlightenment ideals, essentially, right? So it's really interesting, and there's pretty good philosophy in it. One of the things that kind of struck me, obviously, it's very timely, is uh her like she's talking with her general, right? She like just like took the throne from her husband, and her like top general is telling her like, oh, like the Ottomans are like starting to like amass at our border. You know, they're like starting to harass us. It's like we need to go to war. We need to like prove we're strong off the rip so that we can have like lasting peace. And she's like, what do you mean? We're not going to war to like have peace. She's like, we can avoid this war. Like, let's just fucking like talk to them, right? Like, send the ambassador over. He's like, that's not the way we do things in Russia. She's like, and she's just basically saying like, maybe we've just never tried anything else, right? And it's this kind of harkens back to what I was texting you about earlier. How even if this is like a grand play at weakening China, which it looks like it seems like that's about the only thing that makes sense at this point.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
my bad. I mean, I think, sorry to quick
yeah?
cut you off here,
Well,
but just when it comes to the China thing, just to kind of like clarify exactly what I mean by that is that like, so what happens here is that you've got, the four big countries that are kind of enemies of the US economy, basically, and it's Russia, Iran, Venezuela, and China. Now, Russia, Iran, and Venezuela are all massive oil exporting countries, and China is a massive oil importing country. So China is their only customer, and those three countries are China's main supplier. So by cutting off both Venezuela and Iran, what we're doing is we're cutting off China's supply of energy, which is intended to slow down their
that's
production
that's
capacity so
their
we can
that's
catch
their
up.
that's their weakest. That's one of their main weaknesses. I've seen this recently too. Is it's their dependence on foreign oil, essentially, to run their machinery, to run their production capacity, which they do have like incredible production capacity now at this point. Um, but if what I was building to, if this is the long play at China, eh, is it justified? Does it really make any sense that I think like one of the things I texted you was like our economic system works if we force everyone to abide by it and to run on our systems of currency and to use our dollar and to like play along in every aspect. And if that doesn't work, if like any small portion of the world doesn't do it, then it doesn't work. And that's what justifies you going in and bombing anyone, overthrowing their government, installing your own puppet there because they have to play by your rules. Again, we bring up the question: should morality come into governance?
I mean, I think in this case, I guess like it's not that I don't think government should be entirely immoral and just only act on behalf of their own interests all the time. But when it comes to a lot of these types of like geopolitical conflicts, it's tough to weigh in like a moral to use a moral lens, because morality is subjective, and what is moral for everyone in the United States is not at all the same moral code as you might find in somewhere like Iran or even somewhere like China. Now, obviously, there's like some things that are obviously not good, like blowing up a school is not good, and so like that, I'm sure we can all agree on. I'm sure the Iranians are like, hey, what the hell, I thought that was against the rules. I thought that was terrorism. That's pretty much what it is, and so. I don't like when it comes to that type of thing. Yes, we can't be doing that. We have to act within our own moral principles and what the country stands for, is supposed to stand for. But when it comes to like combating, because what we got to understand here is that this is not just like the United States. This is the global economy. And it's not that it doesn't work if a couple countries here and there don't join, but what it doesn't work. it- I mean, China is the piece that's causing it not to work because China's kind of, trying to have their cake and eat it too, whereas they still run the domestic, centrally planned economy. And so they're not actually getting free markets domestically, but they're opening up their shores to the free markets when it comes to global trade. And so the reason that's screwing up the system is because now you have everyone who's incentivized to go and open up shop in China and have basically either like slave wages or, absolutely brutal hours, bad conditions, whereas all of the other countries who are participating in this economy all have come to the table and agreed that, there's a certain threshold of humanitarian rights that if we want to engage in these trades, we need to all kind of agree that we're all gonna, you know, respect these standards that we're setting. And China is not doing that, but because they're not doing that, they're incentivizing capital from other countries to leave those countries and go there. And if we allow them to keep doing that, then what's going to end up happening is that the U.S. is going to lose its position at the top, and China will take it, and then we no longer even get to say, "Hey, you should pay people enough to, be able to afford food, or you should not make people work 20 hours in a day. You should not have people working in conditions where there's multiple deaths regularly at the factory, things like this." In the United States, as much as we like to complain about it, that type of thing isn't happening here. It's not happening very often. In fact, we're complaining because the $15 minimum wage is too low. We need to get 20. We need to get 25. In China, they're
See,
paying one, two.
it doesn't happen here, right? If you're any like, say you're like a family-owned accounting firm, right? And you have 40-ish employees, and you like do people's taxes or whatever. And then if you get reported to, who the fuck do you report this shit to? I don't even know. Some federal agency that you're only making $2 an hour at this accounting firm. That firm would be fucked, right? They'd probably either get shut down or they'd get sued into oblivion or whatever, right? Who do you report that to? What agency does that shit?
Is it Department of Labor? I don't know.
Okay, yeah, it's got to be. That would evading me. Okay, so that applies. However, when you move up to the mega conglomerations, like let's say Apple or Nestle, apparently these fuckers are using slave labor in the global south to get all of their raw materials and resources. So while it doesn't happen for us, we are still essentially, are we not still like colonial power in that
No,
aspect?
yeah. Yeah, we are, but that keep in mind that that's the private interests who are doing that, and that's exactly what I'm talking about with China is that we're also, I mean, yeah, we're doing it in the Congo, we're doing it everywhere, but the difference between China and the Congo is that the Congo is not trying to start their own currencies that's going to replace ours. And so we don't care about them. They could use the slave labor. We do care about China because they're
But
actually going
but
to
you but
threaten
you
our currency
but you
status, and so
but
we have
no,
to
no, no,
stop them.
that's not what I'm saying. You were bringing up the moral argument of, well, we can't let China become a global superpower because they don't treat their laborers well. So all right, just because we treat our American laborers well, and in order to treat people in the global south very poorly, is that not also pretty bad?
Yeah, it's pretty bad, but not for me. But if China's in charge, then it's bad for me because if they're going to treat their own laborers like that, imagine what they do to us. We're just a bunch of foreigners. I mean, it's not good either way,
That
but
that
that's the reason why it's a problem. It wouldn't be any would it be any better if China were on top? I don't think so because
no.
not only the slave labor is one thing, but the censorship of speech. I don't want to reiterate all because we talked about it
No,
last
right.
time, but censorship of speech, all that type of thing. I mean, this is a I mean, that one's, I think, a big one. If you're going to be running the global economy, but you don't respect, freedom of speech and all the human rights that we have in our constitution, especially in the day of AI and all of these type of things. I mean, what's to stop the United States? I don't think would ever have like a 1984 Orwellian future to that degree. Although we do have we have a different type, but it's not nearly as bad, I don't think. Whereas if China is running the global economy, then that's one company. That's the fear that we've talked about before of the monopoly that owns the world. That would be it.
No, no, I get that aspect of it. It's just when you think of, I don't know, when that case, I guess it is at that point that you said, well, it's bad for me, and that threw me off a lot because like, well, that's pretty goddamn like not greedy or whatever, but you know that's kind of, but it does feel like it comes down to us or them because all right, if we have pretty bad practice, I can't really justify us being like more moral than China though because for the last
We are, but
for the
I
last like
definitely think we are.
well, that's like 60 years we've been the ones going around bullying like everyone who doesn't step in line. I don't know. I guess are we stepping in line because we find them to be immoral, or are we?
I mean, that's also that's okay. That's only partially true. I mean, it's not wrong because we have done that. But when we're talking about we're bullying these other countries, it's not that we're bullying them. We're going in and we're investing our money into their country to build up infrastructure there, and which is good for us because we want to have that hegemony. But part of the deal is that they have to they can't play by their own rules because you're entering into our game. So we're saying, hey, you can join our game if you want, but you have to play by our rules. That's so I don't think that that's I mean sometimes it has been, don't get me wrong. There's been many cases where we were doing stuff that we weren't supposed to be doing. A lot of that was the CIA. But like when it comes to just like a general practice of like, oh yeah, we just go to other places and like beat them up and take their stuff and come back. That's not exactly how we do it.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. One of the one thing I wanted to bring up, you brought up the fucking 1984, right, Orwellian aspect of like control over media and things like that. One thing I saw on Twitter that actually interested me the other day was we read Brave New you had Brave New World in high school, right?
Yeah, I it's been a while, so I can't remember too
Yeah,
much of
no.
it,
So
but
that was Aldous Huxley, right? And like Huxley and Orwell, I think that like those two books, 1984 and Brave New World, came out like reasonably close in time to each other. So people were like would like debate like, oh, is the future going to be like Huxley's vision, which is like kind of like the entertaining yourselves to death aspect. That's what his was, right? Like they take like the soma, the drug,
yeah, the
and
Soma, yeah.
everyone's so distracted from like their life that they're like living in this like fake world essentially, or will it be like a authoritarian mind control regime from the top down? And actually, it turns out it's kind of both. It's
Yeah, I was just
yeah,
gonna say it's
it's kind of
look at
both.
that, we got the best of both.
Exactly. It turned out it wasn't a question of or, it was a question of both, like and, like it's Orwellian and Huxleyan.
It is definitely there's
Dude,
definitely
because you just look,
major aspects of both going
yeah,
on
you
right
look at
now.
your phone and it's like you are you think the world in your phone is the world until you like step away from your phone from an extended period of time and realize that the world is also just fucking like what's around you in your near area, and that is much much different than the world you see on your phone.
Yeah, and then, all the time you're spending on your phone, well, they're watching you too. And I mean, that's the one thing is that everyone would say that forever, everyone would say, "Oh, they're keeping your data and they're tracking your data." And the thing about that was like I never really cared that much. I don't think most people do unless they have something to hide. But the thing about it that's weird, the part of the reason I didn't care at all really was because it's like, okay, they're not gonna like go look at my data though, unless they like need to, unless there's like I'm
And most people
accused
there's
of a
no
crime
need
or
to,
something. Right.
right? So it's like I don't know, right? Go on.
But now with AI, the AI is just gonna look at the AI is just gonna accumulate all of it and use it to build your digital profile. And so it's like there might not be a human like looking up my name to see what I'm up to, who's behind the I'm in the back door, but the AI is constantly doing so. There is like the AI is constantly doing that, and if ever someone were to ask the AI, then they could just tell them because it's like it's almost like having a person who is doing that, and it's not a real human being, but it is an entity that can communicate to a real human being and give them whatever info they need in real time.
Have you seen the the thing that apparently almost everyone has, like, it's almost like a digital, like, avatar. Like, these AI companies are building, like, profiles of
Hmm.
everyone, and so they basically they might know you better than you know yourself, possibly just based off of all of your, like, preferences and data and, you know, scrubbing, like, every website you've ever been to. They'll, like, categorize you as, I don't know, for me, they probably fucking have me categorized as, like, single bachelor, like, fucking, like, sports enthusiast, gambling addict, there's like they have like all like your fucking like buckets of personality basically. So they know like where to loop you in. And I feel like it's just all going to go towards like ads probably because like what else would that be used for?
So it's like, well, it's the ads, and then it's also just your algorithm. Because, so like I was gonna say, so I'm pretty sure my algorithm can tell if I'm drinking. Because like whenever I'm drinking, it'll give me different stuff that I'm like, if I'm like just not drinking and I'm sitting here reading a book or something, then if I go on Instagram, then I'll see a bunch of the usual stuff I see, which is like a bunch of stock stuff, politics stuff. I'll see some sports, if it's if I'm into that at the time, but whatever, I'll see a lot of stuff like that. And like if I'm drinking, like after this podcast, if I go on, I bet it's gonna be like a lot more like funny stuff because I usually like I guess maybe I just like that more if I'm drinking.
Of course.
Look at the funny stuff more. So it's like but it can tell that before I even got like I just got on, like, so it's like it knows, like you said, it knows a lot more about you than you probably know about yourself, and it's like more than we would even pick up on. I don't know if this is true or not, but a guy who is a pretty smart guy I know who worked in tech for a little bit, he told me that so it's definitely true in the VR, and he told me it's also true on the phones, and I don't know if I believe this or not, but they said in the VR it's definitely true. They've got metrics on your pupils dilating so they could see exactly what is riling you up. And he's claiming that that's also true on your phone when you're scrolling.
I
I don't know if that's
I
true.
I 100% believe that because they have to be tracking eye movement. Do you know what unlocks your phone with face recognition?
It's
It's your
probably the
eyes.
eyes, right? Yeah.
It's 100% your eyes. If you, like, have your face over there and you, like, block your eyes, if you don't no, this is how I know. It's looking at your phone that opens it because I can have my face unlock, but if my phone is over here and I'm looking over there, it does not unlock. Once you put your eyes on the phone, then it can, like, scan you, recognize you, and put you in. So I 100% believe that they're watching your pupils at all times. They're watching, like, where you're looking, right? So when a video pops up on my TikTok and it's, I don't know, like say it's an ASMR video, they're watching which spot of the video I am watching, essentially. And I do agree. I've seen that before, or not seen, I've noticed it before where different times of the day when I go on, they show me different things, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
if I'm on at work, then they're usually showing me like politics stuff because during like working hours, then I'm looking like politics stuff because like, all right, I'm looking for some like background, like entertainment essentially, right? Just like something to like have on and listen to while I'm like doing some shit or whatever, right? But then if I'm on like late, then they'll start showing me either like ASMR videos that I'm watching to like fall asleep to. So they keep showing me those. Or if I'm like in a different mood, they'll be showing me like conspiracy theory shit where like you're just like doom scrolling up
Yeah,
for
yeah.
like hours at a time. Like, holy shit, like this is what the pyramids are.
I
Like,
get I get
like
caught in that one pretty often.
like shit like
Like it'll
that.
be
So
like a
I've
late
noticed
night,
at
like,
different
oh
times of
shit.
the day, they'll give me different shit.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
definitely.
that's crazy that the fucking drinking one. Like that's blowing my mind.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's kind of like I don't, I personally don't mind because they do a pretty good job at showing me what I want to see most of the time. But it's also just like because what you were saying, well, it's mostly probably they're using it for ads. See, that's the part that I always thought, but I'm starting to get a little bit suspicious that that's not the case anymore because with all the AI stuff and with the virtual reality stuff and with all of this type of things that they're trying to do, it seems like it would be kind of waste of a very valuable resource. That would be like, if we've got all this oil and we're only gonna use it just for cars, and it's like, well, we could power all these big machines with it
So
though too.
what is it for then? Like predictions or
It's
like
basically,
mon-
yeah, I mean, kind of,
monitoring future crimes?
yeah, but yeah, I mean, in like the dystopian sense of like where that could go, it could be the monitoring future crimes, but I don't think we're there yet, and I don't think that. Well, if China was in charge, they could do that, but the United States wouldn't do that. But it's more even than that though. It's just like it's just I don't really know exactly what it is, but something about it just creeps me out that like they're like watching my eye movement. It's like, if I was like with someone at a table and they were doing that, I would be like, get this the hell away from me. It's creeping me out. But
Have you
it's like
seen
I spend all the time constantly with this machine that's doing it.
have you seen Ex Machina?
No, you told me to watch that, and I actually saw it like as I was scrolling on the TV, and I was like, oh shit, and I like put saved it to my list, and I never got around
All
to
right,
it.
I'd watch it. It's about AI. You'd like it, and it's like just like a good movie. It's well made. But one of the things that is going into 100% what we're saying right now is so the premise is this guy works for a tech company. He gets invited to the CEO's like mansion, right? It's like out in like the fucking Pacific Northwest, like a massive like complex base. I think it's basically like he's like Elon Musk or something, right? He's like the guy he works for. And he's going there to Turing test their new AI. So if he can try and like point out any aspect where he would realize that this is a robot he's talking to. But what is the company? It was a social media company, right? And he's talking to the CEO founder, and he's like no one really realized what they were sitting on. He's like, there were people in this space, but no one knew what the data actually was. He's like, but I realized. He's like, what we were collecting was that minutia of facial expressions and interest and things like that. When you see a post that like inspires you or whatever, you look this way. So that's all like the training basically that he's putting into his AI robot to make it seem more and more human. He's like, everyone had all the data. No one knew what it was actually like for, basically. And that's what he used it for.
Yeah, yeah, no, I
So
think that
maybe they're
makes
trying to
sense.
replace us. I don't know.
Well, they're definitely trying to do that. That's definitely the case. And that'll probably happen soon too. But it's kind of funny because over the last like month or so, I've been trying to kind of like I had that Jeffrey Epstein book I was talking about on here a couple weeks ago, and that one was like a long one. It took me a while to get through. I finally got through that one, and then I started reading one when the Iran war started popping off. I had another one about the Middle East. So I'm like, all right, now's a good time to get into that. So I started reading a little bit about that. And before the Jeffrey Epstein one, I was reading that one about I might have mentioned on here, it's The Devil's Chessboard it's called. And it's about the CIA just like kind of running just like going rogue all over the world and just like toppling regimes and like starting shit, and it's all for like corporate interest, and it's all for like their personal profit. So I was reading all these books, and I was kind of like, it's like, all right, I finished the last one I was reading, and I was like, all right, I've been reading all these books about like these pedophile crime rings and like all this CIA corruption, all this stuff. It's like I need something that's like more uplifting. And there's a new book I ordered it and it just came in a couple weeks ago. I wanted to read it. It's called The Thinking Machine, and it's like about Nvidia and Jensen Huang and his come up and everything. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And so I start reading that one, and now here we are talking about how these guys, they're actually hacking into your brain so that they can replace you and then charge you with crimes you haven't committed. It's like, well, fuck. But
Dude,
no,
that
this book is pretty cool though. It's pretty the Nvidia stuff is pretty interesting.
that thinking machine, that sounds a lot like one you said is like one of your favorite books of all time. I thought it also Darwin in the Machine, right?
But yeah, 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 Darwin Among Machines.
Yeah. And you said that one was kind of like evolution of biology versus evolution of technology, right?
Yeah, and but the thing about that one is that that one was written in like 92 or something. And so it was just like at the time. So it's like it's pretty cool to read now, just to see like, oh, here's what it's done since. This NVIDIA one just came out like a couple months ago, and so it's pretty good because it's like it's got a lot of recent stuff in it. And it's an interesting thing about NVIDIA is like the biggest company by market cap in the world, and everyone knows them as like they make the chips, right? And I think we talked about it before that they don't actually make the chips, but they design the chips.
Hmm.
And so one thing I never really realized was like how okay, well, like if all they're doing is designing the chips, it'd be one thing if they had like the only big chip factory in the world like they do in Taiwan, then it would be like, oh, that's why that's the most expensive company in the world by market cap. But it's like if all they're doing is designing the chips, what's to stop AMD from designing the chips and being a better designer? And I realized what it was. It was that it was something called CUDA, and this is actually what all like a large majority of the value in NVIDIA is. It's in a software that they have that anyone can use, so other companies use it too, so they're kind of locked in. And it's basically like a language where you can take what used to be the graphic processing units for video games, and you can then use them to solve that is AI. It's basically they are AI. Because it's all of their algorithms and their software that's actually solving all of these math problems that is now being used for AI, but it's also starting to be used for other things too. So I'm curious, like we might see in the next like 5, 10 years, 4 or 5 different markets. Just you've got AI over here, and then you've got gene editing is another one they're using it for, and it might all of these big, massive like industry changing innovations might all just stem from NVIDIA's software that they invented.
So that was that called CUDA?
Hmm.
That's they are taking old video game GPUs and that well, what is that system? I don't know. Maybe you
Okay,
don't.
yeah. All right, I'm glad you asked. It's
Yeah.
fresh. It's fresh on. So if we go back to the 90s, all the video game graphics were kind of weak. They were just little shapes. Pac-Man, and, Atari, stuff like that. And we started getting these advanced graphics. A lot of that was NVIDIA. And the way that they were coming up with these advanced graphics was they're using a different type of computing. So normally in like a regular computer, they have a CPU, which computes in sequence, and it operates, one step at a time, but it goes so fast that it can do like a pretty complex thing with like 20 different operations. The problem with the video game stuff is that it has to be quick. Like you're hitting the buttons and it's got to be, like the entire millions of things have to move. And when they're doing this mathematically, every pixel is a value. And so if I hit one button, there needs to be millions of operations within a split second. Otherwise, the video game is worthless. And so NVIDIA comes up with the idea of rather than making like a more powerful CPU, they take a bunch of very, very weak CPUs and they put them all in sequence. And so now we've got like thousands and thousands of CPUs that all act together. And it's basically they can just line them up with the pixels. And so each one controls like one pixel or one cluster of pixels. And they do this using like vector math and like matrix theory and all these things where you're basically doing one equation that will change like multiple numbers at once. So it's like
Mhm.
less operations for the machine to handle. So really you're doing like a million math problems, but the machine feels like it's only doing like a couple. That was the whole idea. What they realized when AI was starting to come up was like, hey, we could just like turn off the image and it still just gives you the math. And then that math is the same math that can be used for for a lot of other stuff.
Mhm.
And you can do math that any other tool would take forever. Even like a very super powerful CPU, you wouldn't be able to do it in one sitting to do this many operations, but like they can do it in a split second on there. And they're the only ones really that can do it at that scale. And so now after kind of figuring that out, I'm like, okay, now I see why they're 4.5 trillion uh in market cap.
What other uses aside from AI? You said gene editing.
Yeah, so some people are using it to mine crypto. The gene editing is an interesting one too because the human genome is another example where we know what we're looking for, but the problem is that the DNA code is like billions and billions of units long, so it's hard to find the needle in the haystack, but they could use that CUDA software to do that. I'm trying to think what else did I see? There was a couple other ones. Oh, some space travel, something to do with space travel. They're using it
Okay.
for something like that.
Have you ever seen how microchip is made?
Not
Have you ever
actually
seen those
physically.
videos?
I don't think so.
Yeah, like the physical aspect of it.
Is it
It's
it's the I know that they use like those the lithography machines, but I've never actually seen them. I just like read stuff about them.
yeah, so I off the top of my head, I won't remember the entire process, but you know how there's better chips than others? There's like better GPUs than others, and like we control all like the good ones, and we don't let like other companies have like the less good ones, basically.
I know that it's are we talking the transistors basically? So like I know like Moore's law is basically that the transistors continue to get smaller and smaller. I think it was like every 2 years, and so the amount of computing power that's available on the chip can double like every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, so essentially, when you're doing it, you're taking these raw minerals and you're compressing them down, and you're compressing and compressing and compressing and compressing. You're taking like literally, we're tricking rocks into thinking is what it boils down to, which is insane.
That's
But
pretty
you're
great. That's pretty good.
it's crazy. But you're taking like I forget what it is, but you're taking a certain type of mineral, you keep compressing it down, and eventually there's going to be more perfect like sequencing essentially. Like think about a diamond, right? When there's like a flawless diamond, it's perfect carbon structure. There's no blemishes in it. So what the better GPUs are is literally just and then yes, there is obviously like the more transistors you can put on there, the more output you'll be able to get. But on like the physical side, it's literally just the more perfect you can get the structure. That's what like the absolute best GPUs are made from is like the best product. And then from there on out, like there's like the second tier when they have like imperfections in them and it's not as perfect of a molecular structure. It's just crazy to me. It just comes down to like continuously compressing rocks into
Yeah, in your brains.
into brains. Yeah.
Everyone talks
Yeah.
about like Taiwan, and because Taiwan has the fabrication, but the fabrication plant for like most of the world's chips, and the reason they have a monopoly on that is because, for one, it was economies of scale. Eventually, they just beat everyone else out. But now they've got these big contracts with the one company in the world. So there's other companies in the world who know how to make the chips and can. They just can't do them at that scale. There's only one company in the world that knows how to make the machine that knows how to make the machine, and that's
Hmm.
ASML. I think it's in Sweden. These EUV lithography machines. There's like not that many of them. They can only make a couple dozen a year. And it's like, so why can't we make like hundreds of those a year? There's got to be a resource or something? And it's like, no, it's not even that. It's literally that they're like so hard to make. They have to be like so precise, and they're so like sensitive to like if like a car drives by outside and rattles the ground while you're putting the thing in place, you're gonna screw up the whole machine. And they're like, they're
That's
$50 million or
yeah.
something. So it's like impossible to make them. There's only one company that makes them. So
That's
if
insane.
that's
Here's
the main choke point right there. If that
here's
company
what
goes down, we're screwed.
that's insane. Here's a little historical anecdote as well. So I brought Catherine the Great, who comes after, but this is a Peter the Great. Been dipping into my Russian history a lot recently. But Peter the Great, at a certain point, he takes a tour of Europe, right? Because he also he wants to westernize, right? He wants to bring Russia forth out of the Dark Ages, and he is visiting countries. He wants to build a navy, right? He like the Russians somehow up to this point, the Russians have been landlocked for their entire history. And he builds a ship with the Swedes. And at the very end, he's like, all right, that was like informative, but like, it's not really what I was looking for. Like, I want a blueprint on how to make ships, essentially, right? And this is essentially also what like Rome had to do when they're fighting Carthage. They didn't have uh, a good navy beforehand. Rome figured out a way to mass produce ships, right? Like, all right, it's essentially like a pre-modern assembly line, right? Like they'd have like, all right, we need this amount of boards to do this. The Swedes didn't do it that way. The Swedes didn't have like a blueprint to follow. The Swedes intuitively knew how to build a boat. So they would just have craftsmen that built boats, essentially, right? So he couldn't get his blueprint. And when he goes to like Britain afterwards, they have a blueprint, so he's able to follow that basically. Maybe that lithographic company is something along the lines of that, where it's like, how do we do it? We don't really know, but we know how to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good one too. I like stuff like that. I do like history of technology. Like I like learning about, almost talking about like the robber barons and stuff. I think that's pretty cool. And then I know that the ships, some of those countries up there, like the Swedes and the Dutch, were like really good at building ships. And at the time, that was when it comes to like geopolitics,
Right.
whoever builds the best
We
ships
have
wins.
300 ships that are way better than yours. Like we will win.
I feel like the new ship is probably, I mean, it's in a little bit of a different aspect. It's probably like the GPU or the chip or something like that. But I mean, the ships were big because military and trade, you need them for both. Whereas now we might have like if we have autonomous drones that are both delivering packages and also sending in missiles, it's kind of like the new ship.
Yeah, for sure. It's whatever technology is the most dominant at the time is you have to be the most dominant in, right?
Everyone's talking about AI, but I do think it would. I think we're just the thing about all technologies is that they, especially information technologies, which AI is like one of the probably the best information technology we've ever had by far. And it's like information technologies tend to fuel other massive innovations because that's what innovating is all about is like having access to information, being able to assemble the right team and be able to move quick and figure things out that are outside your area of expertise. And AI is like a perfect tool for that. That's like the printing press back in the day. That was probably social media, the internet, all of these things. AI definitely is the next iteration of that. And usually after that happens, you start seeing like a lot of new stuff happen. Like look at social media and cloud computing is another one that kind of gets slept on a little bit. But actually cloud computing more important. Once cloud computing became a thing, that's when you started seeing like Netflix really blowing up, Uber really blows up, all these types of like mobile apps. Like I mean, I don't know how much money I spent on Uber, but it's insane. And this is something that
Think about
they
how
don't
crazy
even.
Netflix's come up was going from when they first started. You would select a DVD that you wanted to watch. They would mail you the DVD. You'd watch it, and then you'd like return it via mail. And that was what was gonna. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna take over like movie stores." Like, no way. And it's like, "Oh wait, what if you just had all the access to the movies on your TV instantaneously?"
Yeah, did you know Blockbuster had an offer to buy it, I think for $1 billion, and they turned him down.
I mean, you see that all the time. What is it like Yahoo and Google, right?
Yeah.
Like Yahoo could have bought Google for like a few like 100 million or something. They didn't. Then they had an opportunity to buy it for like 2 million and they didn't. And then Google absolutely fucking takes like dominates. And then Google recently bought Yahoo for like pennies.
Yeah, you always hear those, and then you always hear um about how like the found like take one of these big giant companies and there's always like one founder or like co-founder who just sold all of his stocks like
Yeah.
right after they hit it somewhat big and he would be like by far there was somebody in Nvidia and then there was also someone in Apple and like both of those two guys if they would have held on their stocks they would both be like by far they'd be like trillionaires and they sold them for like 10 million or something.
But it's entirely possible that if those guys don't sell that equity, then the company never absolutely takes off, right?
Yeah,
Because
true, true.
if some dude owns like I don't know how much they owned, like 30-40% of a company, and then you can't like raise the funds against, that equity, it doesn't get built up essentially. But I've been even seeing those Nvidia guys where they'd be like, would they be like the richest men in the world? So
So
like,
the one guy was in there and it was like he was up there. It would have been like I don't know if it was a trillion, but it was above 500 billion. I think it was 700 billion or something like that would have been his worth because
because
he
that
had
because
25% of the company, so whatever that is.
then
Well, that's
also
probably about a trillion because they're at 4 trillion. Yeah, so it was close to a trillion.
it's like, well, all right, who's buying that at that point? Oh, this guy's worth $1 trillion or whatever, right? It's like, well, who no one can buy a trillion. He can't
Yeah,
receive
true. Yeah, yeah.
$1 trillion for that, right? Because maybe I mean a group effort could do it even more
Take
so
out
than
loans against it.
true. Even more so than those guys. What's even more fucked up is like uh maybe not more fucked up, maybe in a more personal aspect, but like the Victoria's Secret guy, right? You ever seen that? It's like the guy who made Victoria's Secret, like sold it for like 200K or something, and now it's a goddamn multi-billion-dollar company. I think like Colonel Sanders was the same. Like Colonel Sanders like sold KFC. The dude didn't get very rich. Now KFC is fucking massive.
I feel like if I had a killer idea for a company and it could be like $100 billion company, but someone were to offer me after 2 years of building it, someone's like, "Hey, I'll give you 50 million for it." I'd be like, "Yeah, take it."
Yeah,
Because I
right.
mean, like, like you get like a guy like Colonel Sanders, like the guy probably has no idea what he's doing, how to run a business. He's just really good at this making chicken
And
thing, and
making
so
some
like
chicken.
let the business guys handle the business. I'll take my couple million and walk away.
Yeah, right. It's like yeah, like someone offers you like $10 million. It's like, are you turning that down? But yeah,
Yeah, I'll take it. Especially if it's like a software company. Think about how many of these software companies were just like coded up by some college kids who pulled the all-nighter and like, maybe spent a couple months just putting together some software and then they can sell that. I mean, there's been like so many of those where then they'll sell that for like $10 million or something to Google or whoever. It's like, oh, dude, if I was, I wish I would have been into coding because I would have tried running that one for sure.
bro, it's weird that like when we were in high school, I think they're still probably toting this line. When we were definitely in high school, maybe a little before that, everyone what did everyone say? Oh, you got to get into computer science. You
Yeah,
got to learn coding, right? And now it's like those could be some of the first jobs that go, possibly. It's insane because I don't I wanted to bring this up to you. I don't know if I have yet. Those huge mega software companies, the Nvidias, Anthropic, shit like that. Do you know what they're looking for right now? They're not looking for coders.
probably energy, right?
They're
Or
looking
no?
to hire people like uh
Oh, I was thinking it was like energy, like people who
no,
like,
no. Like for what they're
okay.
hiring for. Do you think they're hiring computer science people right now? Like no, not really.
Yeah, probably not.
Like especially like yes, maybe apparently this is also a thing that I saw. Apparently there's like 3 or 400 like top notch like engineers or whatever, and all of the like OpenAI's, Anthropics, all those guys are like fighting over these guys, and these guys are fucking like essentially like NFL players. Essentially, it's like
Yeah.
they'll sign like a 6 month contract for like bozo bucks, and then like they'll get sniped by the competition. Like, oh fuck, we lost like Vivek. Like, god damn it, like we like they sniped him from us. But what I was saying, they're not like hiring like junior coders. What are they hiring? They're hiring fucking like they're hiring prompters. They're hiring like like essentially English majors
That's crazy.
is what you'd be studying because they need people who can interact with the software the best to get it to act the best way apparently. So what are they hiring? Like literally the title is storyteller. That's what they're hiring for.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. I mean, the fact that they're not. I mean, I'd be surprised if they like stopped hiring coders altogether. But
And
the fact that
I'm not saying that, but again, OpenAI is Anthropic hiring like some kid who just graduated college for with a comp sci degree. Like I don't like not really, right?
right, yeah, and that I'm not surprised at because what is AI? I think we said this way back, probably like a year ago, but we were saying how like when you look at AI, it's like what does it do? If you had to narrow it down, like what does AI do? It's a translator. It translates coded language into human language. That's what it does. And it also is now working to translate human language into other human language with the real-time translation stuff. That's what it does. And so it's like the same reason why I think we were making this joke of like, imagine being like a Spanish major right now and like I can just translate everything someone says in Spanish in real time just using my phone. What the hell is the point of like being a major in a different language? Normally you'd be a translator. Now we have automatic translators. It's kind of not to that degree, but in a similar sense when it comes to coding, it's like you're learning this other language, but we have a translator now. So if as long as you understand, it kind of goes with what you say a lot, which is like, yeah, we have the calculator in our pockets, but you still have to know the math, right? It's like we want people who like know the math and they know the English and they know like we want someone who's like really good at, story writing, like they're
That's
like a
that's
pro
that's what it is. That
and they
they're
don't need to
hiring
code.
they're hiring storytellers because at this point, what you're trying to get out of it is a story back a story back to you, right?
Hmm.
It's so you have to tell it the correct story to give you what you want back. Kind of like when you wrote these prompts, which I don't even think we're gonna get to in this episode. We just freeballed this whole damn thing.
Yeah, yeah, we seriously
Um,
did. I didn't realize we're already
yeah,
at an hour.
but you asked like, all right, I need some like philosophy debate prompts, and it gives you some bullshit. And that's like, no, 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 I need very specific, nuanced things that aren't like talked about very frequently. And then it gives us incredible prompts after that, right? You have to know what to say to it to get it to say the right thing back to you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's just like it's just iterations and then yeah, what if we just start seeing these tech companies just start hiring like it's not like
Good.
we're hiring coders. We're hiring like
Like
one
George R. R.
person from
Martin.
everything. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
gonna hire like a bunch of writers, and then we're gonna hire a bunch of people who are physical therapists because we need to teach it everything about. And it's basically like you got to just get everybody in there to teach it everything.
Yeah. And that kind of goes towards, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. It's like, it could be a divergent technology, right? Wherein you have the system to create what you want, but okay, it's not like it's going to perfectly create a workout plan for someone without a lot of training on it. So then you hire 20 physical trainers to come in and say, all right, if someone is looking to do this, right, like to build muscle mass, then we would like give them this caloric intake versus this like output, right? And that's something that you would have to train it on individually, I feel like, as opposed because
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
the
going to be
personalization, really. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
It's personalization. It's specification.
yeah. No, yeah, that makes sense. And so, I mean, I can see that being a divergent thing, and then it does have what's the word for this? A deteriorating margin of return as it gets super big. So like if you wanted one neural network to know everything in the world, it's like
It takes too
it'd
much
be
computing power.
yeah, it'd be like impossible to get there. And if you did get there, it would be so much money, it wouldn't even be worth it. Like you're better off just having one that knows everything about like healthcare, and then another one that knows everything about space. And kind of dividing them up like that, it just makes more sense from like a cost basis too. But I mean, who knows though? Because everything keeps innovating so quick. By 2 years from now, there'll be some new chip. There'll be better rocks that who knows what we could do with them.
All right. Uh, Welcome back in, everyone. We are going to do a couple of these philosophic questions that we had the overlords cook up for us. We're going to save maybe some of the better ones. Probably do a full one on that. I don't think we foresaw the free ball session of this going so long, but we'll do a couple here for titillate your taste buds and then see where we end up. So what's the first one we got?
All right, the archival paradox. I think I'm saying that right. And the question is, if a civilization records and preserves all knowledge perfectly, including AI archives, total digital memory, does this accelerate progress or paralyze innovation by eliminating the selective forgetting that historically enabled intellectual revolutions? I like that question. That's a pretty smart question, and
Great,
it's a
great
tough one.
question. Let me start it off here. Some of the greatest revivals that you've seen throughout history is just that. It's a reviving of what had been lost knowledge, right? So you look at like the Renaissance, they start looking towards Greek and Roman philosophic ideas, engineering ideas that had been lost for centuries. It gets revived, sparks a whole new line of thinking. So in that aspect, you do want to preserve these texts. You look back on our old the oldest story, maybe the oldest story that we have is the Epic of Gilgamesh. What is the Epic of Gilgamesh? It's basically the hero's journey, which every good piece of media that you've read, watched, listened to in your lifetime is probably that. It's probably the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero's journey retold in some aspect in a modern lens. It's very important that you have those past things to lean on. Do you have something to cue in there, or can we be stuck not inventing new stories? You know, not inventing new ways of thinking if we're constantly looking to the past, is what it's asking, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and there's some things too, especially in I mean, this kinda has to do a little bit with what we were talking about, that in nowadays time, because innovation's happening so quickly that we, like, don't really even see it, like, when it comes to, like, oh, the new chip, it's like we don't really even notice. If you're, like, a real, engineer, you see what the difference is, but they're kind of iterative, and so what happens is that, like, a lot of times the landscape changes slowly over time, and we don't realize that it has, and as it changes, it changes it changes the knowledge of reality, basically. Like, if the landscape is changing, well, what might have been true years ago is likely no longer true. For example, like, trying to think of a good example here.
I have a couple I can hop in right there on. Our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, this is a pretty goddamn good work of literature, right? This is a very, especially at the time, an incredibly revolutionary thing where all men are created equal. They're endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, truths that still ring true today. But then you build in the aspect of, well, okay, these guys also still owned slaves at this time, right? So while they did have enlightened ideas, when you look back on the scope of history, what they were doing is abhorrent today, right?
Yeah, so is that basically, like, in this example, that would be like, okay, all of those great ideas that they had would kind of theoretically be, like, dismissed as nonsense if everyone who lives nowadays constantly were thinking of them as, like, oh, these were these, like, evil slave owners, but because we've kind of, not really, but ideally forgot that part of the history and we only remember them as, like, these smart founding fathers.
It's
Is
both.
that
I
what?
think it's
Okay, okay.
both. If you read it through the lens of what these guys had no good ideas because they held slaves, you're not getting the point. If you read it as everything that these guys said should be thrown out, the baby with the bathwater, because they held slaves, you're missing the point. I think it's you have to view both sides of yes, these are good ideas, but also yes, these ideas can also change and they can evolve and we can add on top of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, and that's yeah, I definitely, agree with you there. And I mean, even just, like, on a personal level, even if we're not talking, like, societally, I mean, I mean, there are probably situations like that with everyone where, like, if you ever get, like, I'll get, like, a Snapchat reminder of, like, 10 years ago today, and it's like, "Oh, it's back in college," and I'm like, "Oh, hell yeah," like, I was having a great time then. And sometimes I'll look and I'll be like, "Oh, man, I missed that day. That was awesome." And then other times I look and it's like a ridiculous video of me, like, either acting a fool or throwing up or something, like, that now I'm like, "Oh, god, I wish that wasn't out there," and it is, and so it's like those are the things that I wanna forget on an individual level, but, like, on a societal level, same thing applies. And I also just wanted to kinda go the opposite direction with it too, is that sometimes we can be so convinced of something as, like, rule of thumb, common knowledge, and that no longer is true anymore, but that thought of it being true will linger for a while because we haven't noticed the landscape has changed. And, I mean, in this case, if it's like, if we've got, everything documented, all knowledge perfectly documented, well, how do we know then when the knowledge is supposed to change? Um,
Right.
an example I'll give of this is that, you probably heard this one, which is that, you know, growing up, my dad would say stuff like this: "Your house, you buy a house, that's an asset." But you buy a car, that's a liability, right? And, there's debate on whether you can call a house an asset. Nowadays, a lot of people are saying they're not really assets anymore. They used to be considered assets because you can buy them
They
at
would
relatively cheap,
appreciate the value.
and now it's like, oh, they're probably going to go down.
Well, your car's a liability because when you buy it off the lot, it immediately depreciates in value. Well,
Hmm.
also, it's what gets you to work and it's what gets you food and it's what allows you to. I mean, imagine if you had like, not even like, all right, it's the thing that gets you to work, which is 90+% of people's primary income, their labor, right? Which, in that aspect, no, this is not a fucking liability. This is the only thing keeping me afloat is my ability to get to my job. Think about like groceries. It's like, what if I had to Uber Eats all of my groceries? That in the long run, that's just a ridiculous thing.
Yeah, well, so I mean, and I'll even go a step further on the car. So even just in the financial sense, like you said, you drive it off the lot, it goes down in value. So it's considered bad debt. If you had to take out a loan to buy a car, it's considered bad debt. And same with the house. But the difference is that like people would say a house is technically an asset because the value will appreciate. That was the old thing. But even now, you could make your house into an asset by renting it out or putting it up on Airbnb or somehow making money off of it. And then that would technically be an asset if it's bringing in an income. And so everyone goes around thinking, oh yeah, the car's a liability. Let's take a look 5, 10 years into the future. When the car drives itself, doesn't have an engine that has limited miles. It's a computer. And when it can be updated over the air the same way that your phone gets updated, is this a liability at all? Is it going to depreciate in value? Maybe a little bit, but not a whole lot. And also, it drives itself. So I can have it drop me off at work and then go drive around and Uber people and make money.
So
Now your car is an asset
at that
and
point, it's
your
a
and your
completely
house is a
different.
liability.
At that point, it's a completely different thing. However, like you're in the broad aspect of this question we're debating, where should all knowledge be perfectly preserved? Will that possibly hinder future knowledge? That that plays right into what you're saying because how many times will the AI have read a car is a liability
Hmm.
and a house is an asset, where in 30 years from now it could be flipped, but the AI could still be telling you, "Oh, I've read so many times from my time in the 2010s that cars are liabilities and houses are assets, but now houses are depreciating in value because the government's giving everyone an apartment and your car drives itself and makes money on its own." Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like the very idea that like now can knowledge be perfectly preserved, and it's like I don't
No,
even think that's possible
because
because
knowledge is
it's
changing.
constantly changing. Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty good. Should we do another one?
Yeah, let's do one more and then we'll save the rest for next time. All right, this one's pretty good. I can kind of see both sides on this one. It's the incentive corruption of measurement. Once a
Mhm.
metric becomes the target
Oh,
of
yes.
optimization, it ceases to measure the thing it was meant to measure. Goodhart's law. Can complex societies operate without eventually corrupting every performance metric they depend on?
That's a great one, and I read that one. I'm like, that's a really good one. I wasn't actually familiar with the law that it stated in the first part. Are you familiar with that? Because once I
No,
heard
never heard of it before.
once I heard that, I'm like, that kind of makes total sense, though, right? Because as soon as you start measuring something as the baseline, then if that's the thing you're measuring it by, other aspects will change to artificially like change that one baseline you're working off of, and now you're not measuring the thing that you thought you were measuring.
Mhm. And so, yeah, I think my thought on this one is that majority of the time, yes, but not always. I do think it is possible that this doesn't happen. That you can pick the right metric so that it aligns with your goal enough where it doesn't matter how they do it. It doesn't matter what else is changing. If this metric is going up, that's good for my goal. There are metrics you can pick that would do that. And then even if people are like beating around the bush or cheating to try to boost that one specific metric that they're getting measured by, that's good actually. That's actually good. That's helping your goal because it's aligned with your goal. But
This is one
that's
of
you got to
the
pick that metric like you got to be real careful with what metric you pick there.
yes. you're hitting the nail on the head. This is one of the big ones that comes up on our podcast the most, I feel like, is we always talk about what? Incentive structures.
Hmm.
If you've misaligned incentive structures, then you get results that you aren't looking for, right? So we talk about like the profit model that our society is based on. Is that the best thing? Is that the incentive we should be measuring for? And you can argue one way or the other, right? I think the ultimate question is what should we be measuring for? So one thing that popped on my feed earlier today, Ford versus Dodge, right? Henry Ford wanted to like reinvest into his people. He wanted to like reinvest into like machinery. He wanted to give his workers like compensation. He didn't want to pay dividends to the stockholders. The stockholders sued him and said, actually, no, we're the people invested in the company. We're the people you have to be beholden to. And then that court case of Ford versus Dodge is like the basis of when we say companies are about maximizing shareholder value, that's where all of it derives from, right? And then the question becomes, was that a misstep possibly?
I think
Because
so.
you're
I
right,
mean, kind of. I mean,
like
but it is
probably
debatable, though. It is debatable. I mean, it depends. If that, it might not be necessarily that that was specifically the misstep, but when you have a fiduciary duty to maximize profit in dollars, by the way, like the whole point of the free market system was so that what are we actually trying to maximize is we're trying to maximize like quality of life and balance it out with people's free choice. So we can't force your quality of life to be better by forcing you to work 80 hours or like forcing everyone to do this thing. We want to balance it so that you have the freedom to increase your quality of life to the degree that you want to. And also collectively, we want to get all of our quality of life raising. And so the whole profit incentive was built with that in mind. And now, but here we are
and
though,
now it may be a bastardized version of that.
for this exact reason, which is because now most people stop caring about their own quality of life and the quality of life for others. Most people see number go up. That's the metric. That's supposed
Right.
to be the metric getting the quality of life better or getting the society better. But instead it's kind of tearing us apart a little bit because you got people so worried about the metric that they forget that the whole point was to try to make this place better.
Right.
And so that's a good example. And I would go a much easier example I thought of is that like, all right, let's take it a step back. Let's say that profit is the actual goal. Let's take it a step back now. Profit's the goal. So how do we measure whether our economy is doing well when it comes to making profit? Well, what's the number one metric that all the economists talk about all the time? GDP. Terrible metric. Terrible metric. I mean, GDP. Have you ever heard this joke about the two economists walking in the woods?
I think you've told it. Say it again.
So there's two economists walking in the woods, and there's like a pile of shit on the ground, and one of the guys says, I'll pay you $20 to eat that shit. And the guy says, $20? Yeah, I'll do it. And then he goes and does it. And he says, oh my God, that was terrible. Jeez, why did I do that? I only got his $20. And then they keep walking and there's another pile of shit on the ground. And now the guy who already ate the shit last time, he turns to the other guy and he says, hey, I'll give you $20 to eat that piece of shit. And then he goes, fine, I'll do it. And then he does it. And then he gets his $20 back. And then they look at each other
we
and they say,
both ate shit.
yeah, yeah. Well, one guy says, dude, we just both ate shit and we both have the same amount of money we had before. We didn't get anything out of it. And the second economist says, what do you mean? GDP went up 200%. And that's what is going on here. Again, terrible metric. But there are times where like the metric can be chosen correctly. But I guess actually, I mean, the more I think about it, it's like maybe that's just a timescale thing. Maybe it's like eventually, on a long enough time frame, like I think the profit incentive is a great example of that where it's like it probably was going great for a while, and then a long enough time frame, it just it becomes
Right.
something else.
You're trying to like maximize for like happiness, like human prosperity, essentially, is probably what most people would want to maximize for. But then the question becomes, all right, well, you can't just maximize. You could like that's a very ambivalent thing. You then have to narrow it down to how do we actually do that, and then that's where the profit model comes from, right? It's like, well, if free people are given free decisions to spend their money as they will, then better systems will win out over time until eventually those better systems then are no longer incentivized to increase prosperity, they're only incentivized to increase profit, which comes against prosperity. I have another economist joke I want to tell. It's not exactly in the same topic sphere as this one is, but whatever. We're doing economist jokes, and I want to tell this one. So there's the call it three economists stuck on a desert island, right? And so they say, well, all right, we have to get out of here. How do we do it? And like, well, there's a pretty close port nearby, so we just need to build a boat to sail over to the port, and then we'll be able to get our freedom. So like, all right, well, how do we do that? Well, we don't have any of these materials necessary to build a boat. We have some trees which we can build for lumber, but we don't have a saw, we don't have a wrench, and we don't have a hammer, right? So they're debating this, and the one guy goes, "All right, I got it. Imply we have a hammer, a wrench, and a saw, and then we'll get off this island." And that's the joke, because so many times in economics you have to, like, the first thing that they say is like, all right, for this model to work, imply this. It's like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
your implication doesn't make any goddamn sense. Most of the time it's imply people are rational, and then you look and it's like, who the fuck acts rational?
Yeah. No, I mean, so I kinda so for one, when I first started getting into investing, I kinda came across this thing, and I can't remember, it's been a while, but I thought it was pretty good. It kinda, like, got me thinking, and it was when you're saying, like, what are we actually optimizing for, happiness or prosperity? Well, it had I think it was, like, 8 or 9 things that are, like it was kind of like fundamental values. So time is, like, the number 1. Like, everyone just needs time. Like, more time on Earth, more time with your friends, more time with your family, more time
That's the only
everyone needs more
commodity
time.
you actually have
It's
is
the
your
it's
time.
it's the natural currency, really.
Yeah.
Time is basically a currency that you're comes naturally, and you're born with it, and you've only got a finite amount to spend. And then the next one is, like, energy, and it's, like, whether that's energy for yourself through food or whether that's energy for, like, a company through electricity, whatever, it's, like, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing, it's energy. And so you can keep going on this, like, security is one, transportation is one, connectivity, there's many more, but it's, like, basically, like, the point of the profit incentive should be maximize those fundamental things. But now, and I think what I think, this is kind of my own theory, and so I'm sure I'm not 100% correct, but I think what really was a turning point in this, probably, years back, was when, as we started learning more and more stuff about, human nature and psychology and stuff like that, well, marketing went from trying to get publicity to really trying to be, like, kind of psychologically manipulative. Normally, if I'm gonna buy something, then that thing must be worth more to me than the money I'm gonna spend it, otherwise I wouldn't buy it. That's assuming the rational consumer, and a lot more consumers would be rational if it weren't for predatory marketing practices and kind of like the psychological manipulation of, like, the McDonald's commercials that are, like, specifically designed to, like, rest in your subconscious until you see a shit like that, and it's like they got too smart. We understand our own brains too well to, we could start basically hacking other people's brains like that and call it marketing. It's like, that's part of the problem for sure, and that doesn't align with the incentive.
Advertising is an incredibly interesting topic. What marketing initially was, it's like, all right, I'm a carpenter, say, and I need like a really good power saw. DeWalt would come out and say, like, we have the best power saw. It's the most reliable. It cuts the fastest. It's gonna hold its blade sharp the longest. It's gonna do this, right? And that's what kind of initially was supposed to be. It's if someone is looking to buy your genre of goods, then you're targeting to that person. Well, now it's not. Now it's someone who wouldn't necessarily buy your product. How do we get that person? Because the people who are going to buy are already going to buy. Now we have to convince the people who weren't going to buy to buy. And have you ever seen like it's like a gin and tonic commercial from like the 80s or 90s, and imbued in the bubbles there's the word like sex, sex, right, written in like the bubbles in like a font that you can't really see unless you're really looking for it, and that's all like the subliminal messaging shit, right? It's like, all right, you weren't initially going to buy a gin because you're not really a big gin drinker, Now you see this commercial imbued in your subconscious. Well, I would like to have sex.
Hmm.
It's all along those lines.
Yeah, like the entire intent is so that they don't want you to see it. They want you to not see it and then not know why you just, something about that commercial. I liked it. You kind of right,
Right, right.
Yeah, that's see now but that's like intentionally manipulative, and I think that's a perfect example of something going against. Like at that point, we're no longer going for the goal of free trade and everybody wins in a free trade economy because now it's like, all right, no, we are just at this point literally just attempting to brainwash people into buying the things through this medium that's just like a mass broadcast to the entire country. That is pretty much what it is, and it's not like Palantir. No, it's like Burger King. It's like McDonald's.
Right.
It's like Chuck E. Cheese.
Or, in like the 90s and 2000s, do you remember what McDonald's ads and restaurants were like? They were 100% marketed towards children. They
Yeah,
had
yeah,
they had Grimace, they had the Hamburglar. You would see them and you'd want to go there as a kid. They had the play places, right? They had like
yeah.
the ball pits. Now
We
that's
we
changed.
uh we pulled one of these up on one of the episodes like a while back.
Yeah.
It was like a compare side by side. Now it's like for adults. Now
Now
it's
it's
like a
for
coffee
adults
shop
because
basically.
it's more expensive now, so you're not going towards kids, you're going towards the 20-something-year-old who needs Wi-Fi and a place to hop on a Zoom call and somewhere they can just grab, like, a quick coffee. Now they look like corporate office buildings, wherein before they looked like play places, and that's all marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then my thought on that was that part of it might be that there's no kids. And if there are, their parents probably aren't buying them a $15 shitty hamburger from McDonald's. It used to be like, oh yeah, it was like $3. You can get like 10 nuggets, and that's enough
Right.
to fill up my kid, and he gets a little toy, and then he can go hang out in the play place.
He
It was a
he
good spot to
fucked
go.
off for
Now no
he
one's
fucked
going
off for
there.
30 minutes. Now I get, like, 30 minutes of peace and quiet that I can just sit here and, like, relax a little bit. Now
Yeah,
it's
now you got a bunch of like 20s overworked, exhausted, depressed single adults who just need some peace and quiet and an egg McMuffin before work. That's their customer base, basically.
the bread and basket, targeted
Yeah.
consumer. Anything else? We cut this one off.
No, yeah, this one went by quick. I didn't realize how long we've been going. But yeah, we'll do the philosophy stuff
Little
on the
Friday
next one. We'll get
Monday
a little deeper into
for
these. Yeah, yeah.
everyone today.
All right. Sounds good.
Well, thanks everyone.